Do you think one mind is better than many? Neither do we. A University of Chicago Booth School of Business MBA is for curious and collaborative people who value different perspectives and ideas. Chicago Booth takes pride in empowering and being empowered by women of diverse backgrounds. We believe that fostering an inclusive community creates an environment of analytical, open-minded inquiry and produces knowledge with enduring impact. Learn more today at chicagobooth.edu/ellevate. Welcome to the Ellevate podcast, conversations with women changing the face of business. Welcome back to the Ellevate podcast. I am your host, Megan Oliver. So excited to have you back with us today for another amazing interview, another amazing set of history makers, another set of what's going on at Ellevate, and just to give you the Ellevate download for this week. So, what is happening at Ellevate this week? We do have a roundtable coming up. Our entrepreneurs are going to be having their roundtable about how to consistently sell your product to grow your business. That's going to be on Thursday. Fabulous topic. I might have to go. Sometimes I go to these entrepreneur roundtables, even though I'm not an entrepreneur, just because they have such good topics. And I can't help it. Speaking of places I might go, we do have a community circle coming up. It's going to be next Tuesday is our next upcoming one. And it is for our remote and hybrid professionals. I am fully remote. I know a lot of people are fully remote or hybrid. This is where a lot of them come together and talk about, kind of the joys, but also the struggles of remote work and the ups and the downs. And it's such a good space. And then for our in-person events, our Los Angeles chapter is hosting a happy hour at Serendipity Labs, DTLA. That's on Thursday. And then our Philadelphia chapter is hosting a breakfast in the burbs at Founding Farmers next Tuesday. And our New York City chapter is hosting their Summer in the City series, Aligning Industries Happy Hour, Healthcare and Wellness. That's also going to be next Tuesday. So if you're in the LA, Philly, or New York areas, be sure to come out to these. They're amazing. You're going to meet some amazing women. And don't be afraid to go on elevatenetwork.com and look for virtual chapter events too. So we're going to cut to our interview now, but don't forget to wait around after the interview because that's what I'm going to do all of our history makers. I know, super popular segment and we're not getting rid of it. But speaking of our interview guest today, it's another one that Maricela recorded before she left. This interview is with Rena Greifinger, who is the managing director of the Maverick Collective, a group of high net worth women who use their power to work towards solving women's health and reproductive rights issues in developing countries by supporting projects that would not otherwise get funding. She's an expert in using philanthropy as a tool to wield significant wealth to finance unproven new ideas on the ground conceived by local women. You want to talk about an amazing bio, an amazing person, and an amazing interview that you are going to love. And let's go ahead and cut to that now.
Well, today I am here with Rena Greifinger. Rena, how are you?
I'm doing great. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for being here and thank you for troubleshooting for y'all that are listening. We had quite the beginning here. Technology never works.
It never works, but it always comes through in the end. So here we are.
Yeah. So here we are. Rena, I'm very excited to talk to you because I feel like we have some very similar passions about gender equity and women and girls and lifting all of us up. So I am very, 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 very interested to talk to you about it. We definitely look at it from very different angles and more on the business side, you're in the healthcare world, but would love for our listeners for it to come from you. Can you tell us a little bit about what you do and what led you there?
I would be happy to. And again, I feel like we are such kindred spirits, and it's been really exciting to get to know you and just to get to know Ellevate better through my own research and listening to the podcast. And it's just a really incredible group of badass women that you bring on. So I'm honored to be included in that tribe. So I have what I think is the best job in the world. I lead the individual philanthropy team at a large global health organization called PSI, which I'll talk about a little bit more in a moment. But a very special part of the job is to lead something called the Maverick Collective.
Mm-hmm.
And the Maverick Collective is a community of women philanthropists who are investing in global health and reproductive rights with an aim to accelerate gender equity and lift up women and girls everywhere. We were co-founded 10 years ago by PSI with Melinda French Gates and the Crown Princess of Norway to really be a place to engage women with resources in a hands-on experience of funding, something we called experiential philanthropy. And the idea really at the time was, Melinda herself was kind of coming out on her own in her own right as a philanthropist, stepping into her power, taking on issues that she really cared about and was not only passionate about, but really getting smart on. And those are issues she's still championing today, particularly around gender equity and reproductive rights. And she, like many others now, but was really taken seriously and being taken seriously for not just the money that she had or certainly who she was married to, but for her mastery of the issues. And she wanted more women like her to become masters of the issues that they cared about so that they could be, come into the funding space with deeply informed, smart, strategic, and being able to be at tables of power and influence and to champion and advocate for women and girls and for the issues that they care about when it comes to gender equity. And so she banded together with PSI, which is one of the largest global health organizations in the world that's been operating for 52 years now across 46 countries in Africa, Asia, and Latin America, to develop this model of philanthropy that is about deep engagement in the work alongside real dollar grant making. And with the thesis that when we can bring women together in community, funding together, learning together, and using their philanthropy to really drive innovation, to help organizations like ours go where others won't, to take on new ideas, new technologies, new approaches, taboo topics, and to use philanthropy to test and ideate and iterate. We unlock innovation and unlock new, profound, transformational ways of working that we can take to scale. But we also galvanize and mobilize this community of donors to use their full net worth, right? Not just their money, not just their financial capital, but their intellectual capital, their social capital, their, as I always say, their curiosity is their capital to, drive forward and accelerate systemic change. And so that's what we do at Maverick. And we have this thriving community of women. They range in age from early 20s to early 80s. They're investing in projects around the world that, as I said, that kind of are helping us leapfrog in the healthcare space. And then engaging really deeply in that work and in their own learning journey so that they can become more authentic, more activated, more accountable to communities and to proximate leaders, and also more strategic in the way that they mobilize their resources for a life of impact, not just through philanthropy, but in all the ways they use those resources.
I really wanted you to kind of talk through this because I think from what I've read and from what, I'm hearing you say, I've said this before probably in the podcast, but I am not a huge fan of nonprofits and the nonprofit model. And I think the way you are doing it, which is bringing all a person's capital, their interest, the, kind of education of it, but also engaging in the issue besides just giving money, is such a different way of doing philanthropy, and what I think much more powerful and much more sustainable too.
I think that, it is kind of taking for someone who is thinking about business and business approaches, this is a
Right.
business approach to
Right.
philanthropy. It's more of a kind of sometimes we talk about taking a venture mindset into philanthropy.
Mm-hmm.
And PSI, has always been known to take a business approach to solving problems, big, hard social global problems, and using all of the kind of the smarts and the acumen and the approaches that are used in business and in marketing and in franchising and taking that to healthcare. But I'd challenge you actually on your kind of disdain for nonprofits. I mean, I'm curious why. And I think I know some of the, I think I could probably answer that in some ways, but I'd be curious to engage with you in that a little bit, because I think it's, it's easy to make a kind of a sweeping, comment about an entire industry, but it's, there's obviously like some really important and valuable reasons that really effective and high impact nonprofits need to exist.
Yes. First, thank you for that. And I like it when I get challenged. No one challenges me on the podcast. I shouldn't have said it the way I said it, because it shouldn't be, you're right. I made a very sweeping generalization of an industry, and that's not true. That's not true. There are high impact nonprofits. I think part of it is because I don't think there's an aspect of always looking for grants or funding in a way that is not necessarily self-sustainable, that I am not necessarily a fan. I think that taking a business mindset to nonprofits, and some do, is best. I also think there are a lot that are more of a front than anything else. Like, yes, we want to check the box, but not necessarily. So, which I can say about many a thing, to be honest. And I think a lot of it does come from my background. And I remember, being in El Salvador, and I hear a lot of like, all these nonprofits that want to work with developing nations. But the truth is, they don't make a big impact. So I think that's why that savior mindset, that might not necessarily be true. And when you said the word, kind of, we use philanthropy to test and drive innovation, when you said that, to me, it makes sense, because it's not just about like, here, I'm giving you a little bit of something and then you go your own way. It's, we are using this to really drive something that can be sustainable in the future. I don't know if that makes a lot of sense, but that's kind of where I see it. Or my issues.
It absolutely makes sense. And you're not alone in feeling that, and you're not wrong, right? I mean, there's, endless amounts of, millions of nonprofits out there, and there's way too many of us. Actually, that could be a whole other podcast episode. And so many that are highly effective and highly innovative. And it's just incredible what organizations can do with a lean amount of resources, and quite frankly, much more stringent reporting and accounting requirements than most businesses have.
That is true.
And accountability to, we call them donors in this world, but it's really investors, right? So in many ways, actually, a high performing, high functioning nonprofit is just as effective and impactful and important to the world as a high performing business. And then, of course, you're going to find the gamut of performance and effectiveness and impact. I think that there's, however, to your point, there's been so much fragmentation in the nonprofit space, and there's so much kind of diversity in philanthropic approaches and in the way that grant making and funding has been done for decades and decades, that we don't necessarily have a good model. We certainly don't have the best model right now for how money should flow to nonprofits to get their best work done. And nonprofits across the board, in my opinion, are not as impactful as they could be, not necessarily because of their approach or their people, but often because of the kind of donor mindset and the donor culture that we have right now. And so a lot of what we are doing at Maverick and we're in movement with many others in the kind of more progressive philanthropy space, is to really redefine philanthropy and to recognize first and foremost that philanthropy itself is really outdated. It's patriarchal. It's nepotistic, right? It's often not strategic. And we, among others, are really trying to first show, and by doing and practicing and then telling and promoting a form of philanthropy that is much more strategic, high impact, feminist, trust based, one that kind of flips the traditional power hierarchy. Traditionally, you've got people with a lot of money calling the shots and telling others what they expect to see, what they expect impact to mean, how they want things to be measured, how they want things to be reported. And even with the best of intentions, some of the best people in the world with the biggest hearts and big brains and want to make a huge difference, but don't necessarily know what is best for that community in that moment with the real and complex issues going on around them. So a lot of what we're trying to do at Maverick Collective is to bring these, very high net worth donors with major resources and major power and access in close proximity with local leaders, local communities, backed by this highly, credible, high impact organization, PSI, and really unlearning some of those harmful behaviors and power structures, and then redefining together.
Rena, I always learn something in the podcast, but you just now shattered a long held belief of mine of this, like, nonprofits. Because as you're talking, I'm like, that what you're saying right now about philanthropy and the traditional donor mindset and the traditional way that philanthropy has been done, that is what I don't agree with.
Right.
That is what bothers me. It's not nonprofits.
Right.
So it really, you just shifted my mindset. So thank you for that.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, you were talking, I was like, yes, that. and it makes more sense because, as you said, just as you run the gamut with nonprofits of very effective to not effective, it's the same with business, right? You said that, and it's completely true. It's the mindset and the patriarchal nature and you might have the best of intentions, but if you're not funneling that correctly, that is what I think I have the issue with, which is really nice to like kind of separate those in my brain for the first time in my 40 years.
That's really great. I'm really happy to hear that. And I think it's something that is not talked about enough, certainly not in kind of the mainstream. And it takes a lot of humility and a lot of willingness to be open and vulnerable. If you're, for instance, if you're a donor, right? Or you're someone with resources, or someone who's been incredibly successful in business and now wants to turn to philanthropy, and to have the kind of the openness and humility to say, oh, I actually, maybe I'm not the expert in the room, or
Right.
or actually this model of philanthropy that I have learned either directly from, the family members or friends or peers around me who give away money, or just from kind of what we've always seen socially,
Right.
To be able to say and understand that maybe that is at times doing more harm than good. And even if it's not doing harm, it's certainly not doing as much good as it could. And there's a lot, we talk a lot about how the same systems that make philanthropy possible, that make it possible for some people to amass so much wealth that they can then give it away, those same systems are what make life so impossible for so many people. And it is literally the inequity that philanthropy is trying to solve for has built philanthropy. It's like an inherent tension. It's a paradox, and it can be really uncomfortable to acknowledge that paradox if you are a person who is on the side of wealth. And so a lot of what we are doing again at Maverick is about, first of all, being able to name that and say it, and not to shroud it in shame, but to say, okay, now we understand that, and let's work on that, and let's figure out how to break the cycle of inequity and use this incredible asset not just money, as I said, right? Not just financial capital, but the full range of capital that we have to dismantle those systems and make sure that that does not get passed, passed to the next generation and continue.
You're
So
giving me hope.
that's why I said it's the best job, because I get to think with this hopefulness every day, and to work in and amongst, women, particularly the women of the Maverick Collective, all the women who are part of the team here at Maverick. We happen to be an all-woman team where we just get to like think about this and dig in it and try to tackle it every single day. And it's certainly a major long game, but it's very hopeful. Yeah.
Yeah, and the way you, oh my God, I swear I don't usually say this, but it's true. You really are opening my eyes to many things, because I always had this kind of, yes, I always think, it's great. You can make money and then you can and go and help the world, right? Some people, that's the way they think about it. Me, I'm more of the, okay, I'm not making money, but I am helping the world. That's with my talents. That's what I'm on.
You and me, sister.
But I hadn't, like, how you said it, right? These systems that make people amass this wealth that then they can pay it forward or give it away through philanthropy. Those same systems are the ones that are keeping people in inequity.
Mm-hmm.
And it's, I, I, I have no words. I'm like, yes, it's so simple and it's so clear that that's the way it is. But it's also such a complicated problem, because to dismantle those systems, you also have to, God, it's a relearning of everything.
Exactly. And it's just insurmountable to try to do on your own. And that's why,
Right.
the power of this network, certainly that we have at Maverick, but also, as I said, it's a movement. It's a small movement, but it's growing, of groups and networks and people and organizations, foundations, in very influential donors and people who are finally saying, okay, we need to talk about this and address it, and we need to change our ways. And so we're trying to do that in lockstep, and Maverick is certainly trying to use the little slice of this world that we have to be a leader in that.
I love it. I love it so much. I do want to hear about your story, though, your journey. How did you end up, with the best job in the world?
Well, I attribute so much of my kind of values and my core to my family. I often say that I grew up in a family of high achieving do-gooders. So a lot of really the people in my life and the people who I see as mentors, working in nonprofits, for instance, working on behalf of people and in civil society is in my DNA. My maternal grandfather worked his way up from the auto factory floor to becoming the vice president of the United Auto Workers Union when it was kind of in its heyday. And he was a major prominent civil rights activist, labor rights activist. He really taught me before he passed away that the measure of success in life was to help others and to give voice to the voiceless and to create space for people to exercise their agency and their voice. And he was pretty much like, I do not care if you make money. I don't care if you have status. What I care about is that you are impacting the lives of others. And that was just so powerful for me, and for my parents. Both of my parents were public health professionals. My father worked for decades in the US prison system trying to advocate for better health care. My mother founded and ran a large nonprofit in New York City serving Medicaid patients and others, without health care in New York. And again, their lesson to me always was, you can do well by doing good, and that is what we expect of you, is that you do good. So public health and activism were kind of part of the air I breathed growing up. And so I just took time during my college years and post-college to really discover what was exciting to me and meaningful to me. And it's always been in the space of sexual and reproductive health, women and girls, youth especially. I've always had a very deep passion for working with young people and amplifying young voices and lifting up young people, and really honoring the ingenuity and creativity that they have to help us create that social and narrative change.
Mm-hmm.
I spent about 15 years working in different organizations, both domestically and around the world, on the sexual and reproductive health and rights of young people. Worked many years in the space of HIV and AIDS, and then later in access to contraception and teen pregnancy prevention. And I came to PSI 10 years ago as our global youth and girls advisor, and was supporting the organization across all of our markets and countries in kind of improving the way in which we engage girls and youth in sexual and reproductive health programming. And it was at the same time that I started here that the Maverick Collective got started. And I worked with many of our early founding Maverick members on the projects that they were funding. So many of them were funding projects in the youth and girls space. So I've been in this kind of Maverick family since day one. And about 5 years ago, I moved over to the Maverick team to start and launch our Maverick Next program, which is a program that we designed specifically for women who are just at the start of their philanthropy journey. Women who are coming into their wealth or starting to access their wealth now, either through inheritance or through, being kind of self-made, and just kind of taking their first big step into the philanthropy space. And we wanted to create a program for them where they could do it through a co-investment model, investing alongside peers, and also learning together, traveling together to country, investing in projects together, really focusing on what it means to be this young person with a lot of resources and a lot of possibilities, and how to really be as effective and strategic as you can with those possibilities. And so I came over 5 years ago to this team and started that project. And then 3 years ago, kind of took on leadership of the collective and of the philanthropy mission at PSI.
That's so great. So it really has been in your family forever, this like service kind of leadership, I guess, or
Yeah. And really to also, I've just to always take on kind of like issues and areas that are a little bit taboo, or, that others don't want to touch, especially like my dad, right? My dad working in prison health, defending the rights to healthcare of people who are incarcerated. And when he was became an expert in HIV AIDS right at the beginning of the epidemic in the 80s, because it hit the prisons first. And so I remember seeing my dad like give talks, and maybe even on the news at one point, talking about AIDS in prisons. And, I was a kid. But it was just so, I remember it so clearly. And I know that planted some seed in me, that was an issue that I wanted to work on, because I knew right away how heavily stigmatized it was, and how this was an issue that not only was, obviously awful and tragic, and has killed so many people over the last, 3, almost 4 decades that it's been around. But that it was also affecting people that were already marginalized, already stigmatized or ostracized from their communities. And that was something that just, I felt like so passionate about and drawn to. So yeah, I was pushed always from a young age, almost just through osmosis, to go where others won't, and take on things that others are afraid to, and to not be afraid to do so. And so I think Maverick, PSI, always, I was so drawn to PSI because PSI does that, and has always been known to do that. PSI is the organization that's works with men who have sex with men in countries where homosexuality is illegal, works with sex workers, works with, on topics like menstrual health and mental health and access to contraception and access to abortion, issues that so many don't want to touch. And we go there. And that's what drew me to PSI. And it's certainly what drew me to Maverick, to be able to cultivate this community of women who are so intrepid, so bold, so curious. And not only because they're taking on these kind of some of these topics that are taboo, also because they're willing to put really flexible, risk tolerant capital toward ideas and questions rather than just coming in with already proven solutions. And to have someone say, I'm going to give you, $1 million, $250,000, whatever it is, to invest in questions. And I'm on board to be part of this as you figure things out and you fail and you try things and you pivot until we land on something that's really got catalytic potential. That's a really rare person. It's a rare, wealthy person. And it's just amazing to me to get to work with people like that, because it's certainly how I am, and how I always want to live my life.
Yeah, I keep thinking of how you said it before. Curiosity is their capital in many ways too.
100%. Yes.
It's incredible. And you must have some really thick skin, I must say, if you are dealing with these more taboo, harder topics, because you get pushback.
It's been obviously really a really fraught few years, particularly in the reproductive rights space. And I know you've talked about this on the podcast before.
Yeah, and I wanted to bring it up because as you're talking about how you like to go there and PSI goes there, I feel like for me, as I took this role at Ellevate after being here for 10 years, that was one of the things I really wanted. I wanted us to go there, because we shied away from it a lot. And I don't know, how has it been for you being in this space with, everything that's happened?
In a way, it has been so comforting to actually work in this space every day, because at least I get to be around people and I get to work for an organization that is so fiercely and unabashed, pro-choice and woman-centered and rights and choice-centered, that even though it's been obviously a horrible blow and we are enraged and sad and scared, and yet again, it's back to that hopefulness. I at least feel like I get to come to work every day and I can talk about it openly. I can rage openly. I can be scared openly, but I can also be hopeful because I get to see and be part of movements, both domestically and globally, of people that are not stopping the fight, that are more mobilized, more galvanized, more activated to do something about it. And we're actually seeing how people are doing things about it. So I actually feel very privileged to get to be so deeply embedded in this work, because otherwise I think it would feel extremely lonely in all of that rage and sadness. And I know that is what so many people are feeling. I mean, it's like the one thing, if I could leave behind your listeners, is that, none of this work has stopped, and the fight will continue. And we actually have a world of allies. It's not just here in the US. The first thing that happened after Roe was overturned was I got calls from my colleagues, my friends in Malawi, Nigeria, Ethiopia, Kenya, and it was like, I'm here for you. I'm sorry. We will fight. We will fight together. We're in this together. And that's, a beautiful thing. I don't even want to call it a silver lining, because it's hard to say anything good has come out of this, but it's certainly something that keeps my hope alive.
I'm sure. And it must be, you're fighting this fight in other countries. And I think about it with El Salvador. El Salvador is one of the countries that has the worst reproductive rights. I think it, and to think about it, of you're seeing progress in some other countries, and then you're seeing this huge step backward
Mm-hmm.
here, and it's sad.
It's really sad. And it is scary because in the same way that Trump being elected kind of allowed racism and bigotry to surface, doesn't mean it wasn't already there, but it
Right.
allowed it to surface. The same thing is happening in other countries that have had more, much less restrictive abortion policies. Suddenly
Yeah.
the anti-choice movements there are allowed to surface and are surfacing and are stronger because of what happened here. And that is scary. And it will be, this is a long fight now. But I just feel more committed than ever to continuing the fight again, both here and globally. And I've never felt so connected globally to others working in the reproductive rights space as I have in the last several months since the Dobbs decision came out. And I think it's really important for people here, especially people that care about reproductive rights and maybe are, funding reproductive rights, to not lose sight of the need to keep our global community strong while we are fighting the fire right here at home.
So you are working in this space and fighting the fight here globally. But what about everyone else who's not necessarily so directly involved? Like, what can we do?
There are so many ways to just activate whatever kind of passion you have. I like to talk. I think I wrote a piece about this around Valentine's Day. I was thinking about the fact that, philanthropy, the term philanthropy is so loaded now, right? You hear the word philanthropist, it conjures up so many different images for different people. And some of those images are really negative. Some of those images are just distorted. Like all you think of is like Bill Gates, Mackenzie Scott, like, these huge players with massive amount of resources. And so I always like to remind myself and remind anyone that'll listen to me that the original definition of philanthropy is a love of humanity. That's all it is. It's simple. So you can show up as a philanthropist. I want to reclaim the word philanthropist and the identity of
Let's do it.
philanthropist, because every single one of us has the capacity to not only love humanity, but to show your love for it every single day. And that can be in, the tiniest of gestures, all the way to the, giving away of money, to the big stuff. And so I think that sometimes when we are faced with such intractable, scary problems in the world, stripping of our reproductive rights and climate change and you name it, COVID, we can become really paralyzed by the overwhelm and think that we cannot, what could we possibly do at an individual level to make any change? And sometimes that creates a lot of inertia. And so I just think it is so important for everybody to realize that, you can activate your love of humanity every single day through everything from the 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 care and attention that you give your friends, to the, whatever, the person on the street that you decide to feed, to the extra money that you decide to donate to that nonprofit that's doing really good work, to advocating for, at the, about something you care about, whether it's just bringing it up at an uncomfortable dinner conversation, but you need to have it, all the way to, trying to, change, um, change who your vote and support progressive candidates and whatnot. I mean, the list goes on and on. I'm almost, it's hard to give every example because I don't want to exclude them. But I think it just comes back to like, there is no more time to waste. It is so we are in such a state of urgency around so many different problems in society that are rooted in the same injustices and inequities. They just manifest differently, whether you're looking at healthcare or education or wealth inequity, economic inequity, or climate, et cetera. You can choose any which way to focus about what, based on your passions. But the time is now. Like we have to, and we all have to. And so if you've got money to give away, do it. If you've got time to give away, do it. If there's a business out there that is producing social good and impact alongside financial return, invest in it. Yeah. Consume their product. There's just so many ways we can show up in the world as an activist and a philanthropist, and we all need to start. I get to work with a lot of people with a lot of wealth, but I don't let that color my understanding that no matter how much or how little you have, you can act now, and we need to save ourselves, save our planet.
Thank you for that. That's a both hopeful and also thank you for kind of demystifying the idea of philanthropy, because it's important. I think that message that you just shared, it's important that we hear it not once but many times over. Of you can do something for the love of humanity, and you're moving it forward.
That's right. And there are so many incredible people and organizations out there that are really doing the very hard work of and putting themselves and their bodies and their lives on the line every day. And so just supporting them,
Right.
supporting movement leaders and activists and organizations on the front lines and healthcare providers and educators. There's, again, so many ways to do it, but recognizing that the urgency is so great, and there's so many people who are really putting their entire selves and lives into this. And so it's important that we all play our part.
Thank you, Rena. This was fun.
Thank you.
And eye-opening. More than anything, I would say. It was eye-opening.
Thank you. I'm so glad.
We're going to go to our little lightning round. Just a few quick questions. They're all more fun than anything else. A little silly, but we always like to end with this lighter note. So, does pineapple belong on pizza?
Not for me, but I don't judge. I don't judge.
If you could have any superpower, what would it be?
To be in multiple places at once.
Oh, that's a good one. I had never heard that one.
Mm-hmm. I have severe FOMO.
That's a very good one. Mm-hmm. Most used app on your phone?
Probably WhatsApp.
Yeah, that's the same for me.
Mm-hmm.
What sport would you compete in if you were in the Olympics?
I think gymnastics. I love the gymnastics. And Simone Biles is like, I'd fangirl her so hard if I ever met her in person.
You're going to make Megan, my co-host, day with that answer, because she is a huge gymnastics fan and a huge Simone Biles fan.
Nice.
Yeah.
And I can do a headstand, so I feel like I'm well on my way. Yeah.
You are. Favorite mythical creature?
Yeah. I'm going to go with Pegasus. Like a horse that can fly, that just feels like I want speed and I want flight.
Yeah, I like that.
Yeah.
And finally, what's one thought you'd want to leave with our listeners?
I think it comes back to what I said a little bit earlier. Like, you will never regret an act of kindness, whether it's random or it's planned or it's really big or it's really small. You'll never regret it, so just do it.
Great. Awesome. Thank you for that.
Mm-hmm.
Well, thank you for being here. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much. I really enjoyed talking to you.
Welcome back, everybody. I hope you really enjoyed that as much as I did. It was such a good interview. She's so cool. The Maverick Collective is so cool. Just talk about people, using their power for good. And speaking of people using their power for good and representation and everything, let's get into this week's History Makers. I am so excited. Starting off, we have Ruwa Rahman, who became the first Muslim woman and Palestinian American elected to the Georgia State House of Representatives. Nabila Islam became the first Muslim woman elected to the Georgia State Senate. So both Georgia houses had very big events. Lisa Howe became the first Asian American and first woman to lead the New Jersey Army National Guard. Garina Weathers became the first Black woman to serve as Commonwealth's Attorney of Jefferson County, Kentucky. Corey Krupizana became the first woman mayor of St. Lawrence, Pennsylvania. And Deb Funston became the first woman president of the Colorado Association of Chiefs of Police. That is all that I have for you today. Congratulations to all of our history makers. Thank you so much to Rena for coming on and having such an amazing interview. And we hope to see you back next week when Maricela interviews Gabrielle Gambrell, who is a history maker herself. She is the first Black woman to hold her title, as well as the youngest since the college's founding in 1889. She made history as the vice president and head of marketing and communications at Barnard College of Columbia University, the most selective institution in the U.S. devoted to empowering extraordinary women. She's also a New York University and Columbia University professor, where she teaches graduate-level courses in integrated marketing, digital and social media, media relations, corporate communications, and more. Such a good interview, one I've been really excited to release. This one's been coming up for a while on my schedule, and I've just been really excited. You're going to love it. Such a good interview, and I cannot wait to see you then. Bye! Ellevate Network drives real results for ambitious women trying to break through the glass ceiling and achieve success in their careers. We offer a platform full of resources and opportunities for growth, all designed to help you unlock your potential. With Ellevate support, you can take the first step toward achieving your professional goals. With a supportive community and tangible resources at your fingertips, you're only one step away from reaching your fullest potential. Join us today and take advantage of our 30-day free trial to start building the career of your dreams. Thanks so much for listening to the Ellevate podcast. If you like what you hear, you can subscribe, give us 5 stars, and share your review. You can learn all about Ellevate membership and all the great things that Ellevate Network is doing at our website, www.ellevatenetwork.com. That's ELLEVATE network.com. And special thanks to our producer, Catherine Heller. She rocks. Thanks so much, and join us next week.